finally boils down to a simple choice, either a president called Tinubu or a country called Nigeria. Welcome to the news and thank you for tuning in to listen. Please subscribe to our channel to get notified when we post how juicy news updates. Please crucify. Please not click on the notification bell. Nigeria has failed and survived many profound upheavals and turmoil in its short history as an independent country. It faced the 1966 crisis and the civil war that followed it. It faced the MK Abiola debacle. In each of these events, we thought that the country was going to implode, but miraculously it did not. Only Nigerians would tempt the god thus far and still remain unbroken with smithereens. The current situation with Tinubu and his incredible certificate saga seemed to be one of more tests of the gods and one pushed too far against destiny. For one man to be twice a governor of the richest state in Nigeria and accumulate so much control over the wealth of a people and eventually clinch the claim to occupy the office of the president, all based on questionable credentials, is simply too much, isn't it? The issues arising from the outcome of the case of Atiku versus Tinubu in Chicago, United States of America, has raised huge political turbulence in Nigeria, which was now be analyzed in the context of Nigeria's history of upheavals. The question now is, will Nigeria survive Tinubu's presidency? The fallout of the Chicago case may very well lead to the unraveling of Nigeria. That a man, Tinubu, could fool millions of his countrymen and women for so long as something as basic as his medical history and record is mind-boggling. Even more mind-boggling is the fact that he would take the last-minute litigation and far away Chicago to get close to the truth. It is now obvious that Tinubu forged the academic record he submitted to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). That is now beyond doubt. The question of whether he attended the Chicago State University and graduated from there is not a question before the law. Rather, the question is whether the documents he submitted to INEC were actually issued and signed by those said to have signed them. A document prepared and signed by someone else's forgery, even if the contents of that document are accurate. A birth certificate signed by the hospital's accountant pretending to be the hospital medical director is a forgery, even if every piece of information on that birth certificate is true. So the question at this point is not whether Tinubu attended the university. It is not whether he graduated from that university. Rather, the question and only question is whether the document he submitted came from that university and signed by the appropriate officials of that university. The answer to this question is now clearly no. This is because under this position, the officials of Chicago State University officials stated that they have no idea or where or how Tinubu obtained the certificate he submitted to the INEC. That conclusively means that Tinubu produced the certificate from the wrong source. This is conclusively forgery. Let us put the story aside and choose the version that favors Tinubu the most, and that would be that he actually attended the university. He was graduated at some point. However, he lost his certificate. As the election approached, instead of swearing an affidavit that he had no certificate to back up his claims, he decided to manufacture a certificate that would state he graduated from that university. In other words, let us assume that he attended that university and that he graduated from the university. However, by writing up a certificate for himself, he committed forgery. And by submitting the forged certificate to INEC, he stood disqualified under Nigeria's Electoral Act of 2022. This is the basis upon which he should be disqualified. Before we get to the disqualification of Tinubu, we need to address two procedural or technical issues of law that will come up. The first challenge is the issue of pleading format. At what point is an issue properly raised and pleaded in court? Following the case of Atiku versus Tinubu at the Court of Appeal in the first instance, Atiku did not raise the issue of the certificate forgery in his petition. It was in his reply to the answer that he raised it. In his judgment, the Court of Appeal refused to look into the certificate forgery allegation because, according to it, Atiku did not raise it properly. Instead of raising it in his petition, He raised it in his reply to the Tinubu'S answer to Atiku's petition. This is the most blatant application of technicality in that judgment. It meant that the court would turn its eyes away from the truth of the issue because it was not properly presented to it. That is disturbing indeed. It means that the court would allow a person to get away with a glaring wrongdoing because the victim was slow in complaining. But who is the victim of such a blatant violation of the electoral laws of Nigeria? It is actually the people that are victims. Our court, therefore, failed so obviously in its analysis of that point. At the Supreme Court, the issue will arise again. Tinubu urged the Supreme Court to use the same reasoning as the Court appeals to turn a blind eye to the certificate issue. If the Supreme Court follows the Court of Appeal reasoning on that, it means that the entire discovery that came out of the Chicago court trial will be of no consequence in the outcome of the appeal. I doubt that the Supreme Court would do that. The reason is clear. At the U.S. District Court, Tinubu's lawyers pointed out that the issue under consideration had been resolved by the Nigerian Court of Appeal based on the fact that the Court of Appeal had held that the issue was not properly raised. That gave the Chicago court an opportunity to deal with that question, and the Chicago court refused to follow the technical path beaten out by the Nigerian Court of Appeal. The Chicago court did not consider the issue resolved by the mere fact that it was not raised properly. By so doing, the Chicago court sent a message to the Nigerian Supreme Court that such a critical issue ought not to be disposed of on mere technicality. What Chicago court did is what a disinterested and independent judiciary would do. So the Chicago court has set a tone that will hardly be ignored by the Nigerian Supreme Court. To ignore that tone will send a message to the world that the Nigerian Supreme Court justices are neither independent nor disinterested in the outcome of the case. That will make the justices enablers of electoral fraud. I doubt that the Supreme Court justices would take such a risk. Another procedural challenge Tinubu would have at the Supreme Court is based on the fact that generally, a court exercising an appellate jurisdiction does not receive fresh facts or fresh evidence. The orientation of a court on appellate review of a judgment of a lower court is to restrict itself to the facts and evidence presented at the lower court. It does not take new evidence. Indeed, Tinubu's lawyers have made the argument at the Chicago court. They vehemently pointed out to the United Nations District Court judge that the whole exercise of Atiku in Chicago would be of no moment because the Nigerian Supreme Court, being an appellate court, would not receive fresh evidence. But again, the judge did not think they were right. Hence, she went ahead with the trial all the way to her landmark judgment. Alright, on this note, we have come to the end of the news. We say thank you for tuning in to listen. Until I come your way next time, enjoy.